This is the evening that we've got mapped out for you. From 6 o'clock, which is now, there's 10 minutes for me to give you this intro, and then we will have Reza, who, as it says, is chairman of BCS Information Risk Management Association, one of BCS's 100 or so groups.
Assurance, not association.
Assurance. I'm assured that association should be assurance by Reza, and he ought to know because he's the chairman of BCS IRMA. So please join me in welcoming Reza. Good. Good. He will tell us about GDPR security, how to do it. And that's the theme of the evening, how to do it. Then oh, that's me. Who put me there? I will tell you about Brex-IT, how to do it. And here's a little clue. Notice my spelling isn't very good. Keep that in mind, yeah? Then we're very fortunate to have Ronnie, who has come over from Jersey. Ronnie, did you swim or did you take a boat or?
I have my helicopter, so.
See, you know about Jersey, tax haven, rich people, came by helicopter. So, so that'll be Ronnie, and he will tell us a view from across the water about both GDPR and Brexit, and that is quite an interesting view. Then Jane, she is real, but she's also the Virtual Information Security Officer for Whitgift Security. She will tell us about networking to benefit, how to do it. So please join me in welcoming Jane and Ronnie. Okay, then it's me again, I'm afraid, at the end, 10 minutes before the end, to tell you some more information about what's coming up. And then finally, it's over to you to demolish this food and drink. And remember, leave those pillars alone. Okay, so that's it. Let's do things differently. I'm going to tell you, first of all, a bit about our speakers, and then I'll hand over to them. So this is a bit about Reza. Now, I don't know how much you can read at the back. Probably nothing, no? Can you read things? No, that's fine. Okay, I can, because I'm much closer. So I'll read it to you. Reza has been working in various business and IT positions in the last 27 years and currently works as a cybersecurity consultant, specializes in a wide range of consultancy services, for example, information security, risk management, business continuity, IT governance, cybersecurity, and compliance. Hey, it's our world. He helps clients become more efficient, more effective and efficient and so on, using those skills that he's got. And he's got a lot of experience of the commercial sector in various parts of the globe, working with a variety of cultures and work ethics. Now, I know that's right because Reza has just flown back, I believe, just for us from the Middle East. Is that right, Reza? Yes, he tells me that's right. So that's great. So that's Reza. The next person, oh, that's me. Right. I am events director for ISACA London Chapter, and I do various other things. Yeah? I'll skip the rest of it, if that's all right with you for now. Ronnie, much more interesting, co-founder and director of JE3.com. Ronnie, is that related to J2O? Anyway, the drinks are on him afterwards, so have a word with him later. GDPR and Brexit, a view from across the water. I wonder what that view is. Ronnie is a technology evangelist working as a consultant, trainer, and occasional author. He's written a technology book which helps administrators to plan, build, implement, and enhance IT and security compliance policies. As you might expect for one of the Channel Islands, those are pretty hot over there. He has written Microsoft courses and Windows courses, and includes and has done deployment and monitoring of enterprise systems and hybrid cloud computing, largely in Jersey, I believe, but no doubt Ronnie will tell us a bit more about that. Ronnie co-owns JE3.com, one of Jersey's newest fast-growing IT companies, where his time is split between client consulting, which means endpoint and Microsoft infrastructure, and overseeing innovation for product development in the SaaS and mobile application space. He's also a founder of the Jersey Tech Fair, which has really taken off, the island's largest technology event. And he's chairman of BCS in Jersey, a governor at Ort Valley School, and a member of the Jersey Chamber Executive Council, which is, I think, the governing body for Jersey. Is it?
No, it's Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, right. So ask Ronnie for more details of that when it's his turn. But that's Ronnie. Then our final presenter is that virtual person, Jane, who is the Information Security Officer for Whitgift Security. And she'll be helping us with something called networking to benefit, how to do it. So the theme is the common how to do it theme. But let me tell you a teeny bit about Jane from here. She founded Whitgift Security, and that's an IASME certification body. Who's heard of IASME? Super. So you've got a select club of 4 here, Jane, and 100 or more to work on. So that's wonderful. Okay. She's got 30 plus years in the IT industry, with more than 15 focusing on business information security and risk management for IT systems. Hey, that's still our world. That's great. She's been an employee of FTSE 100 companies for most of her career, and latterly, it says here, as Chief Information Security Officer with global accountabilities for IT security risk and implementing programs to improve security. So she suddenly dashes off. She's probably gone off on one of these global assignments. We just have to make sure she doesn't take Ronnie's helicopter. She's been a director of the Institute of Information Security Professionals, and she's a member of the ISACA Women's Leadership Council. Hey, who's heard of the ISACA Women's Leadership Council? 1 man, 2 men, 3 men, 4 men. 4 men, and you've got 105 people to work on, Jane. That's great. She now works with SMEs, doing lots of good things, and she's got something called Give One Day charity, where she provides pro bono security expertise to charities to achieve the UK government-backed Cyber Essentials accreditation. Great work, and she's got lots of security qualifications as well. So that's Jane. Those are our speakers. And then what do we have? We have me shutting up and handing over to people. So with that, please just give one little round of applause again to our speakers whilst I ask Reza to come up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for introduction. As Dalim said, I'm Reza Alavi. I'm chair of Information Risk Management Assurance Specialist Group in Chartered Institute of IT. I'm privileged to be here tonight and go through a very short presentation of GDPR security. I work with few colleagues on a book of cybersecurity, and this would be one of the chapters of that book. So I would be delighted to get your comments and your thoughts and your input, which I can use in that chapter of the book. So clearly the book hasn't finished yet. We're working on that. So I'm responsible for this chapter. And also I understand GDPR has been everywhere. Any website, any social media you go, you see GDPR. Some of you may be just overwhelmed with GDPR and the news about GDPR. But we have to admit GDPR has got lots of implications for large, small, medium companies. For same reason, we will be running a conference on GDPR in April 2018. So you will see the flyer very soon, runs by BCS IRMA, April 2018, just on in the eve of the implementation of the start of the GDPR, which is 25th of May. Just quickly go through a very short background of GDPR. It's been over 25 years, over 20 years of introduction of data protection by EU. There has been a lot of development, a lot of changes, technologies changed, mobile devices and cloud. So the current data protection, EU current data protection allows member states to do their own interpretation of national law. So Europe badly needed a new data protection regulation to cover a new technology, and also to make sure all aspects of privacy, which EU thinks is really important to be covered. As I mentioned, 25th of May 2018 is the start of GDPR is going to roll out, and we have to comply with that. The background of GDPR is the Human Rights Act of EU. So it's all about privacy, and it's all about personal data. So there are many aspects to GDPR. There are many aspects: organizational, governance, security. But in here, we're just interested in the security aspects of GDPR. And we try not to shift to the other issues around GDPR. Article 4 of GDPR concerns about any information relating to identifiable personal information, known as data subject. And that's the main, the main foundation of GDPR, data subjects and dealing with people's data. It is important to mention that GDPR is not replacing with any ISO standard. GDPR is completely different, and it has nothing to do with any ISO standard. That's the important issue. The data subjects, there are lots of definition of data subjects. NIST explained the data subject that those are directly related to individuals, like full name and date of birth and national identification, or other data which is indirectly related to people such as age or gender or grade, salary, that kind of thing. So data subject is concerned about individual identifiable personal data. There are many concepts and there are many issues around GDPR. We're not going through all of these things because clearly we don't have a time, and also this is just a number of important players, a number of important concepts in GDPR. We will be going through data protection policy statement, which is important, and also we will look at the DPIA or PIA, privacy impact assessment. We will mention about PIA, personally identified information. It is really important to understand security. It doesn't mean security is not equal to privacy. Privacy is completely different from security. So as I said, there are lots of other issues. We're not going through this. We will be going through confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and why we've got compliance and resilience and correctness here, and why GDPR introduces these apart from famous CIA security pillar. The main characteristics of the GDPR, the scope of the GDPR, consent, which again we are not going through the concern because concern in itself is a quite massive subject in here. The fines and the penalties, again, is quite not clear how that they can be applied. GDPR explicitly says 4% of the revenue or 20 million euros, whichever is greater. But we don't know until we've got the first case goes to court. Then we will realize what's the fine. One of the major issues in GDPR is privacy by design. So IT security is going to look at this issue objectively, looking at privacy by default and privacy by design. So we're going through that as well. And the very important part is data DPIA or PIA, which is on its own is a bit confusing. We're not going through other options. I just put it in here to give you a flavor of what GDPR is going to cover. Right to be forgotten or breach notification, which is really important part of the GDPR. So how we start our how to deal with GDPR in terms of IT security. GDPR is one of the few legislations which requires explicitly to implement security features. In order to do that, we have to identify the GDPR data. What is the data? What data we're dealing with? That's the first and most important part of that process. So because IT services and IT systems deal with most of the data, they're dealing with data management and most of the data in organizations. So they have to find out what are the data concerned with GDPR. So that's really important to know. Then it goes to how to map GDPR data together. This map should be completely documented, should describe the IT services to how to formalize the data mapped together. The mapping data, it doesn't give us a security control. It doesn't recognize the security controls or mitigation of risk to the data. It's actually explaining what sort of data we have and how the data related to each other in different parts of the organizations by IT. In order to do that, we need a data classification. So the data classification gives us who owns the data, what sort of GDPR concerned data we have, and who owns the data, and who deals with the data, whether this data is in rest or motion or stored somewhere else. So then we go to the risk concern the data. The whole GDPR security process is about risk and the risk-based process. So the risk assessment, which we go through again in other slides, it needs to explain with the risk assessment what is the risk related to GDPR data and the risk assessment and the risk register. what I said in previous slide about confusion in terms of, if we go in here, in terms of the data protection impact analysis, is like a story of chicken and egg, because GDPR explicitly is asking the data for the prioritized data the GDPR is concerned with. But how that data can be identified is through risk assessment. So in here, after mapping the GDPR data, we need to run a risk assessment to find out what risk is related to GDPR data. So after the next stage would be the mapping the safeguarding requirements to data classification, which this one goes back into the design by requirements, which I mentioned. So the documented IT security measured design to satisfy the data protection requirements, and after that, how the effectiveness of the safeguarding. So the privacy by design by requirements, it's got the last stage, which is how this safeguarding measures can be measured as in terms of effectiveness, and in terms of their dealing with requirements by IT services. Then it comes to a pillar of the security. We know CIA is the main characteristics of the IT security, to which GDPR adds resilience. The reason GDPR asks resilience is just because to make sure organizations are responding to security breaches. Organizations can respond, can handle, and make sure that GDPR data correctness process in place if any breach is happening. It is, I think it's in Article 32.1c is which GDPR explicitly asking for recovery after incidents, which makes important the resilience and the correctness of the data, GDPR data. The authenticity of the data, which goes through the identification and authentication and authorizations of the users, which brings to, if you've heard yesterday, there was came to the news, there was a breach in one of the major accountancy firm. And apparently that happened because administrator user was used. And it's funny enough because the same accountancy firm has one of the auditing process, they advise for second layer of authentication, but they didn't do it themselves. So apparently the whole email server and email database hacked, and 145 million of, so I can't remember how many customers of data has been hacked, and apparently it's going since March. Now we know it now. So the authenticity dealing with this, to make sure we've got a proper mechanism in place. Not only right users got right access to data, but also other elements of security has been considered such as second layer of authentication. I think I'll have to go faster than this, Dalim, yeah? Okay. Just quickly go through again in terms of the resilience related to business continuity and disaster recovery, which again explicitly asked by GDPR explicitly requested that to make sure the adequate incident management is in place. And also everything is documented in terms of documentation. The DPIA or privacy impact assessment, data protection impact assessment, again, we mentioned before in that one in terms of running the risk assessment. These two is, we just mentioned the case I've mentioned about the accountancy firm, which they managed to go through the email databases and the privileged user administrator being compromised. And then goes through the encryption, but encryption itself, it doesn't address what GDPR requires. Encryption needs to be documented in any and concern of any data, whether it's stored, whether it's in out of EU or anywhere else. And then it goes to the data breach notification, which requires 48 hours but to in the UK ICO, and also other implementation of other mechanisms such as incidents and security analytics and mobile device management. So there are 4 very important aspects of dealing with data in terms of GDPR data. The data has to be, the minimization of data, they should be minimized. The pseudonymization, which is weaker from anonymization of data, but it has to be used. And it goes to the encryption. It's very important thing about encryption. I think I mentioned encrypting some GDPR data somewhere does not ensure compliance with GDPR. GDPR is explicitly requesting and repeating many times in GDPR that security measures, the level of access, regardless of encryption, the level of access is important, and there should be risk-based approach. And then documentation for all of these policies related to data protections and data protection policy. 5 minutes. I've mentioned risk assessment, which is the pillar of the GDPR to address privacy impact analysis with using risk assessment. When it comes to data protection policy statement, so organizations, they should consider what they need going to do, what resources are going to use, who will be responsible, do they need DPO, data protection officer, and when that process is going to be completed, and how results to be evaluated. This is really important and needs to be documented in the policies they come up with. The board of directors are accountable. Any responsibility, accountability lies with them. So outsourcing, it doesn't mean organizations, they don't have any responsibility anymore or accountability. So you can't just by outsourcing or insurance companies, you cannot get rid of your accountability of your organizations. Again, this is who is going to apply the data protection policy statements is owned by DPO or GDPR data owner, who is the owner of the data, and it should apply to everyone, and it should also apply to third parties as well. There are various standards and guidelines can be used. It doesn't mean if you are you're having IS 27001, it doesn't mean you're complying with GDPR. So, but you can use various standards to make sure a lot of issues with GDPR you cover. ISO 31000 is one of them, which can be used for risk assessment as well. NIST has got, NIST has got a really good explanation of privacy and personal identifiable personal data. I've seen a couple of colleagues in ISACA written a very really good articles in how to use COBIT for compliance of GDPR. I suggest you to read those because they're really good. And that's it. I'll finish this with what IT needs to do. Make sure implement all controls to reduce risk around data, GDPR data. It's really important the creation of a single application to allocate all GDPR data, to centralize, to make sure who owns that, the monitoring of the system, and then the incident management, which is really important because you have to report it in 48 hours. Some misunderstanding about GDPR, I leave it to you to read it. So outsourcing, as I mentioned, that's really important. It doesn't mean you are you're not responsible anymore. I'm sorry I have to finish. I think it went quite. I'll leave this. Sorry, Dalim. Is this slides going to be given to all?
We were intending it, but I'm just wondering. Yes, they will. Okay. Yes, the slides will be available on the ISACA website in due course. They're also being filmed, so there'll be a film if you prefer to watch those instead of the presentation slides.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, whilst Luke sets me up, I'm going to tell you that my talk is about Brexit, but you can see I've got my own style of spelling, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later when I'm allowed to. Yeah? Okay. So, I think Brexit is the next big thing. Well, what does that mean? There are loads of big things, aren't there? And what does Brexit mean anyway? We know, well, we do know, don't we? Because our worthy leader told us, Brexit means Brexit. So, that's alles klar. So, we can move on that basis. For some reason, Angela Merkel wasn't quite as convinced as Theresa May was. But never mind. What a funny way to show slides. Is that how it's going to be? Oh, right. I've got to do it manually, okay. No, it doesn't work, Luke. All right, let's try, otherwise I'll just have to talk. Good, all right then. There are three numbers here, 11, 7, and 19. I'll explain more about those numbers later, but look, this is about Brexit, Brex-IT, how to do IT, because what this is that it's actually an IT readiness plan that I'm going to rope you in on. So let's go. Here's Theresa May, my hero, and here's Mark Carney. He's a doubting sort of character, isn't it? What does he say? He says it's preferable that firms know as much as possible about the desired endpoint and as early as possible about the potential path to the endpoint. What kind of talk is that? Brexit is Brexit. Is there any doubt about that? Well, you might gather that Mark Carney's actually become my hero instead now. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we can actually help him. Let's get him smiling by the end of this. Two-thirds of UK firms are hiring for GDPR. Well, that's good news. Wait a minute. Financial Times, businesses are failing to prepare for falling off the edge of the screen. That's not good, is it? Right. So what we're doing is, of course, hitting a problem in terms of skilled people. Skilled people, good news, that's us. So we are short of us. So we shouldn't be here. We should be out there working. That's what it means.
Don't tell my boss that.
Somebody here is asking me to tell his boss, but I'm not making excuses for you. Good. Okay. Here's something else. Wait a minute. Brexit, freedom of movement is going to end in March 2019. Big net migration fall since the Brexit vote. Wait a minute, how does this match up with us gobbling up more people for GDPR? So we've got people, they've all been gobbled up for GDPR, and now we're getting falling numbers of people. That's not good news, is it? We are going to have to work twice as hard, or become like Jane and become virtual, okay? So this is my first message. Become virtual, work harder, faster, more. Yeah? Please make a note. All right, so here's something else. The euro hits an 8-year high against the pound. The strong eurozone data and Brexit, strong eurozone data and Brexit uncertainty drive sterling sharply lower. That's not good, is it? Now, in terms of these people flooding out of the country, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But there's one very simple fact. There are millions of foreign people in the UK. I classify myself as one. Whenever I go home, my wife says, "Who are you? Where have you come from?" So there are actually reckoned to be something like 3 million EU citizens in the UK. I know, I'm married to one, but also there's a website, I believe, which is called 3 Million, about people who are waiting to be told clearly by Her Majesty's government that they are wanted in the UK, because the situation they're in is nothing has been said. So the government assumes that's okay, but they, of course, don't assume it's okay. This is going to lead to a problem. 1 million plus Polish workers in the UK. Now, they are here to earn money and largely to send it back to families and so on. So what's going to happen if the pound isn't worth earning? It might be a self-motivated leaving. So those are the sort of things that could be a problem. Now let's come down to IT. Down at the bottom line here, Brexit could spell disaster for UK IT. Who says so? Computer Weekly. A year ago. Of course, everything's changed since then, so we're all right now, aren't we? Well, I actually admire what's happening in Jersey, which Ronnie will tell us more about, but I was privileged to see, because these are snaps of websites from Jersey. And the Brexit workshop for the governing people and so on, Ronnie can tell us more about who states members are, but they are catering to go forward and not be in a state which is likely to be where we are. And they've also sent out a survey to all their companies in Jersey. It's called the Let's Talk Brexit survey, where, in my words, they ask a simple question. What do you think about Brexit? How is it going to affect you? Implication, and how can we help you? So they are doing that on that little island of Jersey, which controls a whole lot of money and so on, and also is linked to the other Channel Islands and to the Isle of Man, and has affinities also with Ireland. Now, that's interesting. We'll come to Ireland again in a minute, but here we are. Good old Theresa May, she's made a statement. They have made a statement. There is no need for EU citizens living in the UK to do anything now. Do you hear that, EU citizen? Yeah? No need to do anything. That's good. There will be no change to the status of EU citizens living in the UK while the UK remains in the EU. Great, tremendous. Relax, Alex, you've got another 10 days. Yeah. If you'd like to find out the latest information, you can sign up. So sign up, and when they come to wheel you away, you can wave the websites at them. That's good. And there's lots of information available. What you need to know about the UK leaving the EU. So is that all clear? Are we all right now? Yeah? We're all sorted, aren't we? Is there anybody here who does not have a UK passport? Oh my word, that's lots. That's not good, is it? So what are you going to do? Don't tell me, we'll talk about it later. Let's go to the next thing. Good old PwC. I used to work for PwC, so of course I believe in this strongly. They have a supply chain Brexit plan. Supply chain, that's what we need to look after. We've talked about people and the supply chain. What are we going to do in terms of getting supplies? What are we going to do about selling things? Some of the issues, and I'm going to touch on some other things now as well. For IT, Brexit means risks, but also many opportunities. I'm taking the theme of this evening as being GDPR is about risk and how to address it and be compliant and so on. Brexit is about the other side. It's about the risk but also the opportunities. For example, gaining competitive advantage for firms that are demonstrably ready for Brexit. Okay, so I won't go back to Y2K and so on, although I could. You might leave me there. But here's something. I'm going to skip through a few things now. There's something called Cyber Essentials. Who's heard of that? It's a government-funded, oh my word, almost everybody. Maybe some people behind the pillar as well. So that's tremendous. In June 2014, the government launched a guidance and certification scheme. You have to register. It includes a questionnaire, and then a Cyber Essentials methodology, a set of basic technical controls has been developed, including by ISACA, which turns out to be the Information Assurance for Small and Medium Enterprises body. Oh gosh, thank you, Jane, that's what it is. The full scheme enables organizations to gain Cyber Essentials badges, and it's backed by industry, including the Federation of Small Businesses, the CBI, Confederation of British Industry, and a number of insurance organizations which are offering incentives for businesses. Now that's a good idea, isn't it? So that's about Cyber Essentials. So we're sorted for cyber. What can we do about Brexit? Well, this is an abridged version of what I can talk about, and as many of you know, I can talk. So I'll give you the abridged version right now. What I've done is I've developed a Brexit program, and I've got the upper levels of that, and I'm looking for people who would like to join in terms of helping to develop this and to put it into practice. There's a framework which includes activities, steps, milestones, deliverables, and control tests. That's very much our world, isn't it? There's a client process for member organizations to follow. There's an admin process for us to use. And I needed to put an organization name in there, so I put my own. DSL is me, basically. So there's an admin process as well. There are results that we collect: client status, evidence of deliverables, results of tests, and ticks awarded, you know? So I'm not talking about the sort of ticks that you need flea powder for, but the other type, like the Cyber Essentials. There are tools, the software required for program admin, and there's consultancy to help advise clients. And we if we did this, could really seriously help SMEs in particular. Whose firm is working on Brexit already? The answer is about 15 or 20. Whose firm is working on GDPR already? And the answer is about 90 or so. Good. I'm glad about that second answer anyway. The reality of it is, because we don't know exactly what Brexit politically is, we're leaving aside the other sides of it. And I'm going to propose that we don't. So that's going to be the theme of what I talk about in the next 7¼ seconds. You're joking. All right. I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. Here's my Brexit framework. I have to say it that way because there's nobody who's actually doing it now. But having got this sort of background, you know, PwC and all that stuff, it comes fairly naturally to me. So here's a Brexit readiness cycle for organizations, which majors on governance. For example, see if this sounds familiar. Number 1, review the environment. Number 2, understand the business objectives of your organization. Number 3, confirm responsibilities. Does this sound familiar? Yeah? Then, asset and service management. Very much so, because we need to know what's coming from EU countries, what's coming from non-EU countries. Also, we need to know things like which SLAs have we got that are subject to US law, to European law, German law, for example, SAP, etc., or to UK law. Yippee, we're all right with that one. So, asset and service management, we need to select Brexit tools, which can be really darn simple. And we need to categorize our assets and processes. So we do that. Now, is anybody not doing all this in their organization already? Are you in an organization that doesn't do this? Nobody has confidently put that. Oh, I think you, Luke, you were going to put your hand up, weren't you? But we'll disqualify you. Then you go into risk management. Oh my God, I knew I'd bring it around to our way of thinking. Assess risks, key risk indicators, controls. Identify the risks. List the relevant SLA, KPIs, suppliers and customers. So we're now we know who it is and what it is that we need to do something about. And then what you do is plan what you're going to do. This is project management. Apply the actions. That's the big one. Monitor and communicate. That's it. That's the methodology. What do you think? Do you like it? Yeah? This is specifically for Brexit. Keep in mind, can't use it for anything else. I think I said that the wrong way around, didn't I? This is not specifically for Brexit. You can use it for anything. And that's the point. What I'm trying to do is to show that let's not stay with the uncertainty. We can do something. Let's keep it in our remit, which is IT. Who is in IT here? Virtually everybody. Good. Let's take our world as being IT. Here is the client process. Let's assume that we're in cahoots. We're doing this thing for DSL. And we get clients to register with our program to obtain guidance from us. So you can see there are definitely consultancy opportunities there. And to do it, perform the activities, which is an ongoing process, and use the results for improvement and innovation in their organizations and for their organizations, and dare I say it, for UK business. Then they have to collect status and evidence and provide it to us. Or let me be clear about this. We don't want any company secrets. We just need to know that they're doing it. So it's actually a self-certification process. You say you're doing it, and the MD, CEO confirms it. That's good enough for us. Because what we will do based on that self-provided evidence is give them a tick or a star tick. More about that later. Oh, I'm starting to get really itchy now. And then they can use the tick and publicize for competitive advantage, like something over 40,000 companies can already do with the Cyber Essentials program. It shows they're on track. It shows they're getting their awareness program together for Brexit. Basically, it shows their thinking about moving forward. How that might look is something like this. So here are the 11 activities that I talked about, and I don't think I need to explain what red, amber, and hello. Nothing is green. We need to do something in this organization. Red, amber, and not yet started. Oh my God, let's get cracking. So this is how it might appear to, I'm being terminated. I'll ignore you and carry on for just a minute. Okay, so this is how it might appear. There are activities that I've defined for each of those 11 activities. I have got deliverables and so on. How can you help? Right, it says here, you can help, we can help to make IT good for society via risk-focused IT risk management for Brexit, especially for SMEs. And why I'm saying that is typically big companies, most of us are in big companies, have this going on already, or they'll simply switch GDPR resources to doing this. But the majority of the business world is small companies, and they're the ones who need the help. They could do with having some guidance, couldn't they? That's how it usually tends to be. We can encourage firms to advance their Brexit readiness, and that we can do that by publicizing these aspects, and I'll just quickly skip down these. Publicize and support SME IT-related readiness, for example, of people. So if you approach your European workers and say, hey, we do want you, and we're doing something about it, let's have a look at this paperwork you have to fill in if you want to apply for a visa, a passport, or whatever. Let's see if we can have some workshops at lunchtimes and things to help you do that. Let's open an office in Krakow, in Warsaw, and that will be your walk-in office whenever you want to use it, connected to our company here. You're part of our company, and once every 2 months you'll get an invitation to come to our company meeting here in London. You will be part of our company. We do want you. Contracts and SLAs, you need lawyers for this. Location and logistics, you need to decide what you're going to get from where in the future. Hosting and use of IT infrastructure and software. Are you going to have 2 data centers, 3 data centers, 10 data centers across the globe, including in the EU? What are the implications for data moving across and so on? Here you can see a whole load of cross-referencing we can do with GDPR and other worlds. Business continuity. If you have your stuff taken away every night by Iron Mountain or to the cloud, which cloud, which location, where, and then publicize Brexit readiness to the board and customers. If you were to do that, it might elevate the role of IT within the organization. Because if I was a CEO and my IT guy or my CIO came and said, look, you've got some difficult times ahead with Brexit, I know, but don't worry about the IT. I've got this sorted because I've done some what-if diagrams. What will we do if this happens? What will we do if that happens? The worst case will be, what will we do with only half the staff? But you deal with the tough decisions. Don't worry about the IT. I can look after you as far as that's concerned. Do you think that might have a positive effect on the CEO? Do you think he might get in touch with his other directors and say, hey, IT's okay, what about you? It might actually help a few more IT directors to get up to the board. So that essentially is it. The demand's out there, you should be too. Hey, I didn't say that though, did I? It's from www.great.gov.uk. Fantastic. So the government does know about this. They are keen to help you to sell abroad. I am keen to get you to plan your strategy for the future and help small companies do so. If you would like to help with this, IT professionals can help organizations to demonstrably prepare for Brexit using Brex-IT for IT risk, change management, and governance. Who's interested in that? Who would like to help me to push this forward? Few hands are going up there. Please come and see me, and we'll see how we can take this forward. And meanwhile, what I'm about is IT readiness for competitive advantage, and I hope you are too. Okay.
So you've already had an introduction, so I won't introduce myself too much more personally. On the authoring thing, yeah, I've edited a couple of books, mostly around Microsoft enterprise technology, so not just Jersey, with the guys in America. I spent a couple of years late at night writing training for their MCSE courseware, and then a few books, mostly as an editor, but I've had the privilege of doing a couple of chapters. J3.com is an IT company that I founded in Jersey. It's made up of several IT companies that have come together to pool resources and offer better services to their clients. And the two main areas are information security and a business solutions or software development function that, to be honest, on our own was hard to achieve. So we've come together and created a joint enterprise. Personally, I do a little bit of software invention, trying to invent products to change the world. Modvar is a financial forecasting and analytics product that I've come up with, about to go into sort of private MVP very soon. And so that's the sort of day job stuff. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce on the digital subcommittee, which is, Jersey's Chamber of Commerce is actually one of the oldest chambers of commerce in the UK. I think it is the oldest. It's about 750 businesses. And so I meet every 2 months to discuss things, technology on behalf of businesses, you know, how they can use it to grow their businesses, how they can use it to protect their businesses, but also to represent the digital technology companies that are providing services into government, talking about procurement, citizenship, and effectively lobbying. It's a lobbying group. I chair the Chartered Institute for IT. I have done for around about 4 years, and there I tend to put on networking events like this one, and covering, you know, at the moment topics, whether it's information security, becoming a chartered practitioner, awareness about, you know, gaming, programming, databases, big data, data analytics, AI, any kind of topics that are relevant at the time to our professional members. And under BCS, I created something called the Jersey Tech Fair, where I collaborated with other groups and managed to get that from, I think the first event was 3 years ago, it was 1,000 people, and then 4,000 the year after, and then last year 5,000 people. And as I introduced Jersey a little bit, that'll perhaps bear some relevance on how big an event that is in such a small island. So my talk, I'll just introduce Jersey so it has relevance to the two topics, and I'll wrap up with a sort of positive note and Q&A, if I'm allowed a Q&A. So Jersey, more ones and zeros per square kilometre than you might think. So Jersey is actually quite small. It's 9 miles by 5 miles. It's quite a small place. It takes around about 16, 17 hours to walk all the way around the coasts. Or I'm an ultra runner, so 10.5 hours for me is my best. But inside that space is quite a lot of data centres, quite a lot of big companies that have quite a lot of systems there. So it's quite a rich technology environment. 105,000 people, that really brings it into perspective. I'm sure we've got that, you know, inside of a square kilometre here or two. But of those 105,000 people, considering around about 30,000 are working, tax-paying individuals, then 2,500 of them are working in and around digital. So project managers, programmers, network engineers, change transformation specialists. So some people are business analysts, have never had an IT background, but that's a very high number. A little bit more about Jersey is that we have a full gigabit fibre network, and a new one. It's about 80% rolled out to every single home and to all businesses. So quite an interesting place to be if you need internet access. 6,000 businesses, and of those businesses, the industry's carved up into finance and law, makes up a very large part of the island. Not a tax haven, but definitely somewhere where wealth is looked after in large volumes, especially for multinational businesses and multinational people who may have assets across multiple countries. Jersey has a very strong regulation, and is perhaps seen to be quite slow to do business at times because of the high value of regulation there, trying to be a better offshore jurisdiction than other jurisdictions. So what does it look like? Well, I mentioned before it takes around about 17 hours to walk around, and I do mean actually walk around all of these coastal areas. So it's quite a beautiful island. Having travelled the world, I return there all the time and compare it to some of the most scenic places in the world. So it's a great place to live if you're not spending all your time in the office. So GDPR, let's start about GDPR in Jersey. So 240 days, I think, approximately, until it comes up. And is it a question of, is that how long we've got left? Great. Or, oh my dear, dear word, there is only 240 days left. So depending on who I talk to and their role in this, it's two different opinions. And mine is of, well, I own a small business and I need to be compliant. So 248 days is not a great deal of time left for me. I'm already on that ball, and many companies that I speak to are, but I have some concerns about some of my clients, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So we have an Information Commissioner's Office that actually spans both the islands, so two separate teams, but the sort of head of the Commission is running across both islands, and that makes sense. I started promoting GDPR events around about 2 years ago, when the Information Commissioner came to a sort of private meeting and explained what their role was in GDPR and then how they were going to have to communicate this to all of those 105,000 islanders, and explain the size of their team. And I thought, right, as BCS chairman, I would grab all the people I could and start putting on informational events to explain the relevance of data privacy. So outside of their own website that has self-assessment for businesses, for those who are already registered for data compliance or as data controllers and data processors, they've created a GDPR website which really summarizes these 99 articles in the regulation, because actually for a lot of people GDPR is just way too much information. Even for small financial services businesses that might just have 2 or 3 founders, it's a lot of information with all the other regulatory things that they need to think about to understand what data their business owns and GDPR. So there's a lovely website. It's really summarizing those key points. And to give an idea and put this into Jersey context, Jersey has a law, its first law in 1998, and its second law updated in 2005, which pretty much follows the UK law. The only difference, I think, is that Jersey does have adequacy under the 1995 EU directive. So we already have a law that we attempt to uphold and govern our businesses by. So where I think the challenges lie, and I'm assuming these challenges lie here in the UK as well, is that pretty much all businesses are affected by this. And so where I said we've already got adequacy, it's mostly our financial services and legal services that are paying attention to this. A lot of those smaller businesses are looking after data, would not necessarily have ever visited the data protection website. And we know that, and so as information security practitioners and as technologists, we are looking out there and saying, how do we raise awareness? So this is the big issue for us, data privacy awareness, getting people to understand what it is, electronic or not, old filing systems that are potentially mechanical, that are constantly being digitized. People are still scanning in large volumes of data and understanding what that data is. So it is a challenge for Jersey. It's a challenge for the Information Commissioner, for the legal teams, and for the island's governing body as well, because they want to see Jersey as a great place to do business, so they take this very seriously. But how are we getting this message out to people, the relevance of GDPR? Well, the Data Protection Association has just been founded. It's founded in Guernsey first, the other island, and then in Jersey what we've done is we've looked at the founding committee members and taken other companies. So the big 5 are in there. Your PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, all those companies are in on those bodies, and the Data Protection Association is about getting the information out to the people who probably aren't going to be able to pay for workshops, pay for an expert to come and help them. So effectively pushing it out there to retail businesses, to hotels, to startups, to individuals, to tradespeople, and again to small finance companies that literally, they're running a 40, 50-hour shift, and this is just not on their priority list, but they know they need to do something. So, will they pay for a consultant to come in? Will they buy a product to analyze all their data? Probably not. So we're targeting those small to medium-sized businesses through the Data Protection Association and transferring some free information to them. So that's the GDPR status in Jersey. It's taken very, very seriously. The information security aspects of it are that breach is a really important thing to us, and demystifying some of the things about the fine sizes. I think that's really, really important. That a lot of people are marketing that there's big 4% of your global turnover fines. That's definitely not what our information commissioner officer wants to do. She does not want to build a profit-making department. What she wants is to see compliance out there and to not have any complaints in. So very, very clear about what we want to do. We just want to see businesses up their game and be in a position where they know what data they have and actually have a means to identify if that data was lost. So finishing on that means data to be lost. Cybersecurity is a huge part of GDPR from our perspective. As we look out of all these businesses, we're looking at the media constantly. More and more companies are being compromised. So in response to GDPR and other things, as information security companies and technology companies, we're really trying to raise the bar. Cyber Essentials, as mentioned before, I think that's a great program. I think that's a great intro to start helping small businesses. So when I approach a small business, and many of my colleagues who own competing businesses, we will talk about, do you know what Cyber Essentials is? Do you know what it represents? Are you working on GDPR? So I don't sell anything for GDPR, but I do sell information security services to people. So it's, from my perspective, it's about knowing when they've lost their data. I think that's really, really important, whether they've lost their Filofax full of names and addresses with lots of interesting information that they've been collecting in all their meetings that help identify those people whose names and addresses are there. It's trying to understand that when they leave that on the bus, that actually is potentially a breach of data. So it's getting that information over to them and say it's not just electronic, although mostly. That's really it on GDPR. It's obviously watch this space. The law is in draft. I spoke to the people responsible for that law prior to coming over, and I think the answer is that the consultation feedback about the draft law is not as many responses from industry as they would like to have had. But our Chief Minister, who effectively governs the island, has said to the EU, yes, I will have a continued adequacy and I have an equivalent law in place for the island. So a lot of people working on that. So Brexit, the other topic. I've talked a little bit about Jersey. So Jersey can't vote. We didn't have an opportunity to vote on this. So it's something that impacts us whether we like it or not. We couldn't choose to vote, which I don't think is fair, but I think if you look into Jersey and understand how it's governed, it would make sense that we can't vote locally and here. So we have a Brexit team. As soon as the news was broken about this, probably before it went public in its full detail, UK officials would have flown to the island and started talking about what are you going to do about this as an island, because a lot of the agreements that we have rely on UK agreements. So transitive agreements with the EU. We have a lot of separate agreements in place, trade agreements. We have double taxation laws that might be with specific countries. So some things are independently managed, but we do rely on the UK to go out there and represent us as well. So we have a Member of Parliament here who has specifically got the 3 Crown dependencies in their radar on the negotiating table for us. But I'll get to the areas of concern, if you like, afterwards, when that Member of Parliament is actually bringing us up in negotiations. So does the island have a view? Well, Dalim's come over and presented, and we had a room full of people like this, where people, I wouldn't say that the everyday technologist or information security practitioner was bringing up Brexit as a concern, But people came to that talk and did want to engage, and I think that was right for them to do so, especially the larger multi-jurisdictional firms who potentially could be impacted heavily. And we'll go into why. I think I might have missed a slide here, but I want to talk about passports. So the Brexit team in Jersey is working on the most important things first. Goods in, goods out. We need to eat. We don't grow everything locally, although we could. It's become cheaper to import it. So everything in and out the island, this is a huge area for us. So we have a team of customs and immigration officials working on to make sure that everything continues to run operationally, but the people aspect is very much like the UK. So Jersey is made up of a large number of minorities. I think the first largest minority is Portuguese, the second might be Polish, then you've got Irish nationals, you've got many British people, but we've got a lot of French, Spanish and Italian as well. So these people are there working across all industries, and their passports are very meaningful to us. And so is there an impact? There could be. It's a British passport, but it has a Jersey stamp on it and it's got EU on the top. So it's really important that we understand what the rights for those individuals are that are currently residing, those on 5-year contracts, those who've moved permanently. We need to make sure that they can travel safely in and out of the country. And of course, if there is any issues with that, then businesses could well be impacted because these people could be coming in from another jurisdiction. They might be full-time employees working on contract on a specific project, or creating a centre of excellence, a global centre of excellence for an offshore bank potentially. Any kind of issues with immigration will impact us. So there's a team working on that, and I have met them. And I'm quite confident that they will keep Jersey's interests at the forefront of their activities. But we do already suffer from some of the problems that I've seen. So I've read a lot about the media and about the skills shortage. We already suffer this because as an island, we only have 9 degrees on the island. So the bulk of our talent comes to the UK for an education post-18. We have just a foundation degree in computer science, so 2 years and then on to a UK university. That's about to change. So we're used to an issue of young people coming here, living for a few years, and then deciding that Jersey is actually very small and they don't want to work here. They want to go and work for one of the big 4 locally, or they want to shoot over to Paris. They want to do this already. So we already have this as a problem. And as an island, as a community, it impacts us all. Parents don't like to see their kids go off and travel the world and then work outside the island. But a lot of them don't come back until they're much older, when they start to see the island as a great place to settle down or as a business opportunity. But then, people like to explore. And so once they've hit university, very often they can study a degree that we don't have that work for them afterwards. So I know lots of people who are marine biologists, but I only know 2 who actually work full-time as marine biologists. So we have this problem and we're already working on it. One of them is making practical degrees where you can work, for example, an information security degree where you could actually work, part study, and just get through it without leaving the island. So as a sort of innovative place, we have quite a few more degrees, maybe 3 more coming out over the next couple of years. And we're just addressing a skills shortage of people want to go and work elsewhere. Obviously, immigration, IT is in so much demand, and always specialisms are needed. So we have some very good generalists. We have some specialist IT companies, but there are times when you just need 3 months of a complete expert to come and deliver a project. So we look here to London, the UK further afield, and so we're looking at visas, potentially around technology workers for specific things. As an island, we're looking at very much being a bit more creative and creating software startups, and again that requires a certain type of person, and in some cases where you create a startup and you can't find the local skills because you have to recruit locally first, we need to come here or further afield, and then we need licenses for those people. So there are a number of programs already being created by the government, which some of those programs will help to address potential Brexit issues. So Brexit has an impact, GDPR has an impact. GDPR is very clear to measure that. But as an island, I want to give an example of preparing for major change. So, like most people, I mean, I don't know about everyone here, but I assume everyone has an internet connection and everyone needs it to work 24/7, 365. And I know that most people I know cannot live without it. A little while ago, this is really a story to relate to sort of major change and impact. A little while ago, our resilient network infrastructure, which is a series of cables that run between the UK and the continent, had a little hiccup. Now, not a lot of people saw that. What happened is during a storm, an oil tanker or another shipping vessel dragged its anchor across the channel. Now, they're not allowed to do that. And somewhere in a knock, which I haven't seen, but I'm told by the CEO that this is the case, and by the CISO, a little light went on when a cable got axed. And about 10 minutes later, another light went off to say that another cable had just stopped. And so as this boat dragged its anchor through all of these cables, some people in the knock were like, oh, obviously the monitoring app's not working properly, look. But very, very seriously, here is that anchor with some cable bits and pieces. Now, I've credited the BBC or the JT Global, because JT Global is a local telco that sort of looks after the Channel Islands, one of, or the main one. They criticised the BBC for showing this photo, which was taken by one of their engineers. So somehow the BBC got hold of that photo. So I've taken it and credited them both just to be on the safe side. But very, very seriously, the internet did not go down in Jersey or in Guernsey. For some companies that had very big bandwidth needs, that had they may have had all their data going through one pipe because they govern that themselves, the route that they want their data to run. They were impacted and they would have been on the phone instantly. But the majority of the banking infrastructure and Joe Public were routed seamlessly. In fact, as soon as the second cable went down, the telcos were talking to each other, so there are competitive telcos, and they work together to just keep the lights on. So, I mean, it takes quite a while and quite a lot of money to lay a sea cable, so we ran for quite some time and had a lot of cables broken. So it just gives an idea that, as an island, we are ready for some of these things, but we can only prepare so far. So the point I would make is that being in such a small place, we profit from having access to lawyers who work next door and accountants who work downstairs. So if we need to see the ministers, we need some help with something, we can get in and we can see the government quite quickly. And so as long as we're not trying to break lots of laws, we can usually get information and collaborate very, very quickly. So how we will weather Brexit, I can't say for a guaranteed that we're going to sail through it, but we are looking at it and we have a good team of people. In fact, the person responsible for Brexit in the island was in my office last week. I told him I was coming here and he offered me a quote if I need one. And I said, no, I'm just glad you came in and recognised it. So right now, I think that, if I could say anything on their behalf, I don't think enough businesses filled in the survey to talk about what that impact might be. But the residents did fill in their survey, and there's some public results now available on the island-wide resident survey that's been published. So I'm not worried about Dublin, Frankfurt or Paris. If you've got a skills exodus, I hope it's coming our way. Please send us your best talent is how I'm looking at that. We've got nice beaches and potentially degrees that are not going to be so expensive if we can get some of our corporates to pay for them and our government to invest in our future. So that's it from me. Am I allowed to take questions or do I take them later?
You can take one question.
One question.
What is the question? That is the question.
So one question. Any questions? I'm happy to see everyone afterwards. Yes, go ahead.
I'm Richard. I'm working with RBS, including RBS International,
Yep.
who have offices in Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, Gibraltar. Yep. And I'm moving to Barclays, looking at their Brexit preparation program.
Yep.
So the question I've got is Jersey cooperating with those other offshore islands? Because surely aren't they going to have very similar questions in Guernsey, Isle
Yeah.
of Man, and are you sharing notes and cooperating?
Yes, especially with the Crown dependencies. So there's a couple of different things happening at national level and at business level. Obviously, if it's a single enterprise with perhaps multiple offices,
Yep.
you know, the internal knowledge transfer is going to be going on. But yes, I think the cooperation is there. So I mentioned before, the Information Commissioner sits across both. The Ombudsman that's been set up in the last few years, there's one that's collaborating across both of the islands. But the Crown dependencies have a single representative in the UK government in relation to Brexit, and each of the islands should be collaborating. I don't think I've asked that question of the actual Minister for External Relations, but there is a great deal of collaboration going on, and where we can, cost savings. You know, we won't put two positions out there if it can be covered, you know, using virtual representation across other islands. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Any further questions, I'll take them whilst networking afterwards.
Yep.
Good evening. So we are today going to do some networking. You may think you know about networking, and I'm sure you all do. What we're going to try is a bit of structured networking. So what we're trying to do is help you jumpstart creating that old boys network that we all heard of, and perhaps we can't get part of. And we've found that by doing this, we can often help people connect with people who they might otherwise not connect with. So what we're going to look to do is work in groups of 5 to 6 minutes. Work in groups of 5 or 6 people. You've all got on your seats a piece of paper, so you can have a minute or two to think about it. So we're thinking about who we are and what help we might need. We're going to have a minute to introduce yourself to the 6 people who are going to be part of your group and what help you would like. And then we're going to have a couple of minutes focusing on each individual, where you're going to be restating what help you want, and the people around you can then talk about how they can help you. And then at the end, if we've got time, we'll summarise. If not, we'll talk about what we're going to do. So what we've thought about how we would like to organise this is the people who were sitting in the last row, which I think is the last formal row. We're going to ask them to stand up, and they're going to face forward. The people in the row in front are then going to face backwards, so you're going to be in little groups of 6. What we then you should find that the person, as it were, in the top left-hand corner, as I'm looking out at you, is the group leader. And they've got a sheet of paper on their desk, on their seat, which looks like this, because they're going to facilitate your little group. Is that clear? How do we do? So these pieces of paper allow you to have to try and help us start the conversations. So there's your name, who are you, a noun describing you. Given that we've had this conversation about Brexit and GDPR, let's focus on Brexit and GDPR. So which one of those do you want to focus on? What role are you doing now in the area that you're in, and what help would you like in that topic? We've found when doing this in the past that having these initial conversations then gives richer conversations when we go and do networking later. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then I'll quickly come and help you sort yourselves out. For those of you who are group leaders, if there were some interesting nuggets of how people can get help that you would like to share with the rest of the group, if you send them to me, or give them to me. I will collate them, and anyone who's interested can email me, and I will send you the feedback that we got from this session about resources that other people might find interesting. Thank you for participating, and I'd like to hand over to Dalim.
Was that interesting for you? Yeah? Good. Something completely different. All right. Well, now I'm going to do the closing part of this, which is to tell you about the events we've got coming up. So, in ISACA, we now have streams of main events like this one, external events like the one I'm going to tell you about, and also academic relations events. So the next one of these, sorry, and we have others as well. Wow, what a wealth of things we've got. External event at Canada Water Library. That's this one, The New World of Cyber, 10th of October, with these people, including Carla Jobling, who is quite a known figure certainly in recruitment and in other places as well. So do sign up and come to that one if you'd like to, 10th of October. The one after that is our next main event, and that's going to be at a very prestigious venue. So again, we're making the changes. This one was built for royalty, was occupied by a prime minister, and is now the venue for the Royal Society. So kind of different to this, but again, something I hope you'll enjoy. We've got a great lineup of speakers, and it's about supply chain management, as you might gather, including the use of GRC tools, that's governance, risk and compliance tools, for supply chain management. So that's this one. The registration link is up already, so do go and register for that if you're interested. The one after that is a BCS North London branch event at BCS Southampton Street, and it's about something completely different as well, something which does affect you whether you're interested or not, and that's about your health. Lots of things happening in the world of health IT, great things, and you'll see some of them. The flow of the evening will be that we have a GP who will say, oh my God, the sort of things that I have to deal with on a daily basis with patients, things like this, and I'm using IT to help me. DeepMind, CN Hughes of DeepMind, will show what that company, which is quite a sort of avant-garde company, is doing in terms of health IT. And they include students from UCL. So it's only right that we've got UCL come to show us some of the apps they're developing for health coming up. That's Health IT on the 18th of October. And we'll have lots more things coming up for you in November, but I thought that's probably enough just for now. We're planning things in November and December right now. Tell you more about those things later. Meanwhile, why not continue your networking and practicing your networking skills and your questions at the back of the room here. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.